Alrighty, so welcome to the first News of the Week episode of 2022, and I'm actually going to be doing this on a Monday, which I think this is the first time I actually done a News of the Week episode on a Monday, and I decided to do it today instead of waiting until Wednesday because there are some big news that came out of the MLS world these last couple of days. So big that I was actually thinking about making an individual video of the specific news topic, but since I haven't been getting a lot of time off because of me kind of now working at full time at my job, I just simply cannot make these like individual video of the specific news topic like I used to before. But that's why the News of the Week episode is there. That's when we get to talk about some of these big news that happen in the MLS world. And we start off with two teams getting a new head coach that was announced today. And we start off with LAFC, who have announced that Steve Cherundolo will be their new head coach. Now, this kind of came out of left field a little bit with the way that, the first report of him becoming the head coach of LAFC happened yesterday, where, he currently is the head coach of Las Vegas Lights, which LAFC kind of took control of that team and kind of made them a farm team. And during the season when he was coaching the Las Vegas Lights, yeah, they were one of the worst team in the league, which is kind of expected because most development team that currently plays in the USL Championship that is from MLS tends to suck in that league. So it's kind of a bit of a surprise that they decided to kind of name him as the head coach. And I think the LAFC GM John Thornton even doubled down by saying that this was actually a move that they've been want to make a long time coming, and the fact that they were actually going to name him whether Bob Bradley was going to stay. Well, Bob Bradley, if he was going to stay for another year or two, once he decided to leave, he was going to be the new head coach no matter what. But again, this is kind of a surprising move, and in some way, I mean, I understand why LAFC fans are not happy about this because they're getting a guy that is from their farm team in the USL Championship, and he did terribly during that time. So how in the world is he going to step up into the main team and do well? Well, one thing I will say is that we have seen before where USL Championship head coach can sometimes be successful once they come to MLS, but also the fact that, when you look at that Las Vegas Lights team, it was not a good team whatsoever. And I think one of the reasons why a lot of these academy team or a lot of these development team that plays in the USL Championship that's from MLS struggle so much is because they're basically putting like 19 or 20-year-old kids that has not a lot of experience, and they're just going to almost like throw into the fire. And now a lot of these guys are having their first taste of professional experience, and it's unsurprising that of course does not turn out well, and hence that's why this new competition and this new league that is formed, where it's going to be now MLS team don't have to kind of feel that is going to be the case in the future. But we'll see whether or not if Cherundolo is going to be decent. And again, for LAFC, it's kind of weird the fact that they gone from Bob Bradley, who is considered one of the well-known head coach in American soccer, to a guy that is completely unknown that had one of the worst season with a USL Championship side. But like I said, he's going to get to work with better players, and we'll see maybe with him getting work with better players would actually means better success for this team. Now, another USL Championship head coach that was coaching a development team that is going to be becoming a head coach in MLS is Paulo Nakamura. So we talked about Nakamura. He was rumored to become the head coach of the Houston Dynamo. It was official today. They named him as the new head coach of the Dynamo. And again, I think Dynamo fans, there's definitely some skepticism, and that I can understand why. There are also some Dynamo fans feel like this is not a good move with the way that once again the ownership decided to cheap out in terms of getting a head coach in the USL Championship level, and hope that it will be for the best. But we'll see whether or not if that is going to be the case, and we'll see whether or not, I've said before that I really hope that one day when Nakamura did retire from SKC, he has a chance to coach in the MLS level, and here we are. He finally gets a chance to do so, and we'll see whether or not if he can do well with this Houston Dynamo team, and I think he is going to also have some big tasks to do, because this is a team that, while they do have some good placeholder on their team to begin this rebuild, this is going to be a team that is not expected to win a lot of games. And when you don't win a lot of games, and especially in nowadays of MLS, where owners and GMs tend to be very trigger happy in terms of firing head coach, you don't get as much time as it used to be. Now, moving on, in terms of now moving away from talk about head coaching that's been hired by a specific MLS team, to now talk about the main event of some of the big news that come out of MLS these last couple of days, and that, of course, is transfer. And we saw two big transfer and two big young player that is in MLS that has decided to make their big money move to Europe. And one of them is Ricardo Pepi. So, in some way, I'm kind of surprised the fact that, with the way that Ricardo Pepi this offseason feels like we probably might have like a transfer saga of him linking with a bunch of club, and eventually one of them will buy him for a big money. And in some way, it kind of was. I mean, he was rumored to potentially join Wolfsburg, and then there was also other team that was linked to him. But in the end, it's Augsburg, the team that he is going to be joining in the Bundesliga for a record fee of $20 million plus add-ons, and this will be the second most expensive outgoing transfer we have ever seen in MLS history, just a couple of million short of when Miguel Almiron went to Newcastle for $27 million. But nevertheless, what a deal this is for FC Dallas, and that, I know they are going to lose their best player, but that's kind of how it is in MLS, and that's kind of what every team dreams about, where if they can develop a good player, whether from their academy or a guy that they bought from another country, and develop them well and sell them for a big money move, then you basically hits that status. And FC Dallas, I mean, we knew this was coming, where eventually some of their best talent from their academy is going to sold off for a big profit, and this is the first example of that. And also for Ricardo Pepi himself, I know obviously him going to the Bundesliga and joining Augsburg, which is a team that is actually fighting for relegation right now, might not seem like a good move if you want to build your confidence up and be at a team that it is decent. But at the same time, he's definitely going to get some minutes. I mean, I think Augsburg have said that they're trying to get him into the team as soon as possible. And one thing, if you're a young player, that you need to do is you need game time. And hopefully, with him getting some game time with Augsburg, and if he is able to score some goals with the team, or even help them escape from relegation from the Bundesliga, there could be a case where he could be sold off to somewhere else. And I don't know if there is a sell-on clause that FC Dallas has. I mean, I'm assuming they had a sell-on clause in terms of the record fee that they basically accepted from Augsburg. But that at the end of the day, what a move this is, and that this is just another example of how MLS has really took that next step to be a level where this is starting to be a selling league, and teams are not afraid to sell a big amount of money in or sell their best player for a big amount of money. Now, the big question now for FC Dallas is that what they're going to do with that money. And $20 million is a lot of money in their pocket, but we'll see whether or not if they're going to invest that in the academy. I mean, I'm assuming that's going to be their number one priority, because they really pride themselves on being the best academy in the league. But I think the other thing that they might need to use that money is to improve the squad. And this is also where I talked about before, where this is kind of one of the biggest struggle for FC Dallas, and why this team probably could be a team that competes for MLS Cup if they actually have decent scouts to basically scout some talent that is not just from the academy but from other country, and basically bring them up to really get themselves to be an MLS Cup contender. And if they can maybe spend some of that fee on the scouting department, or even maybe sign some player overseas to replace some of the guys that they had, and maybe even find a Ricardo Pepi replacement. Well, I wouldn't say a Ricardo Pepi replacement, because replacing Ricardo Pepi is almost impossible. But we'll see with that money that they have, whether or not if they're going to spend it wisely, because we've seen some teams where even they get big money, they got a big money move and sell their best player off to Europe for a huge sum of money. They don't really sometimes don't invest it very well. I'm looking at you, Vancouver, and in some extent Atlanta, with the way that they got a big money move by selling their best player, and it kind of took. They didn't really kind of spend that money wisely. Now, another player that have make that big money move to Europe is Daryl Dike. So there was that talk before where it seems like Daryl Dike is going to be going to West Brom, and I thought it was going to be a big mistake with him going to West Brom, going back to the Championship on loan again, because he's already proven that he is a decent player in the Championship with Barnsley. So why in the world would Orlando City decide to let him go there on loan before potentially coming back? Like, it seems like they're basically trying to do something similar that they did in 2021. But little did we know that loan move that they're trying to get from West Brom to basically loan Daryl Dike there wasn't actually the case. It was actually a transfer that was going to happen, and in this case, Daryl Dike is going to be going to the English Championship again, and this time on a permanent base with West Brom on a 4-year contract that's worth $9.5 million, and most importantly, there is a 20% sell-on fee. So if West Brom can actually develop Daryl Dike well and sell him to another club, then Orlando City will get 20% off that sell-on fee. But nevertheless, I wish Daryl Dike the best. Oh, I forgot to say the same thing about Ricardo Pepi. I wish him the best too, and especially with the way that he is definitely in the national team picture, and if he can do well with Augsburg, and maybe get to transfer to another big team, he is definitely going to be that future number 9, and maybe a guy that could be the replacement of Clint Dempsey and Landon Donovan in the U.S. men's national team. But obviously, speaking of which, Daryl Dike will also like to kind of have a word with that. And again, we'll see whether or not if he lights up in the Championship again with West Brom. I mean, I don't know exactly where West Brom is. I'm not sure if they're actually fighting to be in the Premier League, but if they do get to the Premier League next season and Daryl Dike is still with the team, yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how he is going to do there, because so far with MLS player that goes into the Premier League, it's kind of a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, I talked about Miguel Almiron in his time with Newcastle. I haven't really heard like a lot of good things so far with Almiron going to Newcastle. So yeah, it seems like that kind of didn't work out. But then people forgot about how Jack Harrison, who was a former NYCFC player, went to Leeds, and he did very well with Leeds. So it's kind of a mixed bag of how MLS player going to the Premier League or going to the Championship in this case. But we'll see whether or not if Dike is going to light up the Championship again like he did during his time at Barnsley. Now, Austin FC have re-signed Alex Ring to a new multi-year contract, and apparently they actually are making Alex Ring a designated player. I think last year they made him kind of a player that is in the high TAM threshold, but now they officially made him a designated player. Now, on one hand, you're thinking, why exactly do Austin want to waste a DP spot on a midfielder? Well, here's the thing. Alex Ring, I thought last season he kind of was advertised of how he is going to be the most important player of this Austin team, especially in the midfield, and that it's no surprise that he decided to basically sign a DP contract. And that I feel like Austin are also kind of thinking about how, if they can sign Alex Ring to a DP contract, then they still have some TAM left over for them to spend on other players. I mean, I think rather of them potentially using or re-signing Alex Ring to a high TAM contract and don't have any TAM to sign other player around the league, they just kind of decided to use that DP slot, which means that the amount of TAM that they have, it, they still have it, because when you make a DP player, you sign someone to a DP contract, it doesn't kind of take in effect in terms of the TAM money that you give to your player, and also count toward the cap space. Now, that being said, there's also, so you can also see it in another way where, it's kind of almost like, well, if you use a TAM spot, or you sign Alex Ring to a high TAM contract, that means that you won't have a chance to potentially sign a designated player in the future, because I think Austin have used up all 3 of their DP spot, with Cecilio Dominguez still DP with Austin, and then Jerussi, the one that they signed over this offseason. And then, of course, this pretty much kind of confirmed that Pochettino is going to be going on loan, because he actually occupied the other DP spot, and since he's going to be going on loan. You know, we'll see whether when he does come back, whether or not if Augsburg is still going to be occupying that spot. But either way, you know, it's a good move for Austin, and especially to able to retain a guy that, again, he means so much to this team. You can see the big impact when he is not in the roster, especially in the midfield. Now, NYCFC have re-signed Maxi Morales to a new contract in 2022. And what's good about this contract is that this is actually not going to be a DP contract that Maxi Morales is going to sign on it. Apparently, it seems like his contract has now gone below the threshold of being a designated player, which means NYCFC gets to open another DP spot, and I believe they now have 2 DP spot open because, you know, Tati Castellanos, they of course have potentially going to be selling him on, and then of course they were also coming into the season with one DPs. Well, actually no. They of course had Tati Castellanos as one of the DP, and then Maxi Morales as the other, and then the third DP, I think it was Talis Magno that buys the other DP. But now with Tati Castellanos leaving and Maxi Morales, his contract being bought down, yeah, you know, this team, all of a sudden, they have 2 designated player. And, you know, as I said, I think this NYCFC team is going to be stronger next year, even if they're going to not have their lethal goals scorer next season. And, you know, they can definitely, once again, spend more money to get those designated player, because one thing we know about NYCFC is that they've been very good in terms of signing designated player, and hence that's why they have been a regular playoff contender, and also a team that finally defeat the narrative of them choking in the playoffs. And the same goes with Maxi Morales too. He basically defeated that narrative of him also choking in the playoffs. It was a monster playoff that he had in this season. I mean, him alongside with Tati Castellanos are really the big part of why this team won MLS Cup this year. But yeah, it's good to see that he, of course, is going to be staying with the team after, you know, there's been, I remember last year and the year prior, there was definitely that concern that it seems like they're in that kind of under the radar, because, you know, we have a lot of these big contract extension, and also we talk about the Daryl Dike and Ricardo Pepi move, that this one kind of fly under the radar. But it's also kind of note to mention that Chicago Fire did sign a defender, and his name is Rafael, and I'm gonna completely butcher this, but I think it's Gestures, that's how you pronounce, from FC Cologne in the Bundesliga. Apparently they have that aspect, unless of course you're a wingback, which I heard he's not a wingback or a fullback in this case. And he was also very good in terms of winning the ball in the air, which is a big attribution you want from your defender. So yeah, the Fire, I think they got a really good signing, and again, this signing kind of fly under the radar because of the other move that happened this week. Now, moving on in terms of the next news, and now talk about some transfer reports. Well, there is a report that Caden Clark is going to be returning the New York Red Bulls on loan from RB Leipzig, and it seems like this report is pretty close to being confirmed. And I think it's for the best, knowing the fact that I don't think Caden Clark is going to get any minutes for RB Leipzig, and with the way that, you know, when he of course returned from the Red Bulls from injury, he didn't really kind of look like his old self. But again, that has to do with the fact that when you return from injury, it's going to be tough to try to get yourself back to match fitness. But with him potentially next year staying with the Red Bulls, and also kind of help the Red Bulls too, because Caden Clark is going to be a very key player, especially on that attack for this New York Red Bulls team. But yeah, with him staying another year, and if he can have a breakout year again and join back RB Leipzig, he might get a chance to, maybe, I wouldn't say break into the starting spot, because you're not going to be breaking in the starting spot in terms of one of the best team in Germany, but maybe be kind of a squad rotation player, and potentially maybe get a better chance to move on to another club on loan from RB Leipzig. Now, another another player that is going to be going on loan of the current team, European team that they have, and it's actually a former MLS player, is Brian Reynolds. Remember him when he decided to move to Roma last offseason from FC Dallas? Well, unfortunately, his time with Roma has not been the best, and it's kind of understandable because when you join a big team like that in Serie A, well, I wouldn't say a big that they're the biggest team in Serie A, but Roma is considered a team that regularly are battling for the top 4 spot in Serie A, and not to mention they have a head coach by the name of Jose Mourinho that you probably have heard from, but obviously Mourinho hasn't been able to get Reynolds some game minutes, and it's understandable why Reynolds feel like he needs to maybe go on loan to somewhere else to get some minute, and Anderlecht could be a place for that to happen. I mean, Anderlecht is definitely a well-known name in European soccer, and especially in Belgium soccer as being a giant there, but with him going there and maybe get some minute. Again, it's the same case I said about Kane Clark. If he is able to get some minute, there could be a good chance where he can return to Roma and get some more playing time, or potentially move on to another team, or maybe even sign with Anderlecht on a permanent transfer and do very well with that club. But she'll see if that is going to be the case. But now moving on and going back to some interleague signings happening in MLS, is the Seattle Sounders, who is reported to sign Albert Rusnak off of free agency. Now, I don't know if I said this before, but I'm still shocked. The fact that RSL have not thought about potentially signing Albert Rusnak to a new contract. I mean, I get that Rusnak basically demand a lot for his new contract, but for a guy that literally is one of your best player, and probably the best player that is not named Damir Kreilach in that RSL team, you give him whatever you want. And the fact that the Sounders are looking for some revenge, not only with them losing to RSL in the playoffs, but also some retribution and payment for them losing in that game and taking away their best player. Yeah, if I'm RSL, I would not only not listen to any, or I would basically give Albert Rusnak any money that he desired, but also just try to convince him to not go to the Seattle Sounders off free agency. I mean, for the Sounders, this would be a great signing in a way where they got another decent attacking option, and it's also going to be interesting to see where he's going to play, because I'm not sure whether or not if he's going to play in that number 10 role, because Ladero currently occupied that spot. I mean, I guess maybe that he could play in another position besides that number 10 role, or in case with Ladero started to age a little bit, they can maybe rotate in that spot. But that just gives the Sounders another good attacking option there. And also, I'm pretty sure every Western Conference team don't want to see that happen. Like, the last thing you want is to get a very angry Sounders team that I know heading into next season, they definitely want some revenge and want some retribution for what happened of them suffering a surprising early exit in the hands of RSL in the playoffs last season. And then finally, the last news out of some big news that come out of MLS is Nashville SC, who is reported to sign Sean Davis off of free agency. So the Red Bulls, of course, announced that they are not going to re-sign their captain Sean Davis, which is not a big surprise because it feels like it's a tradition for the Red Bulls where you're going to let go of your captain almost every single year. And as much as that's kind of heartbreaking if you're a Red Bulls fan, I think they're probably used to it now, and they're not really that disappointed to see Sean Davis go, even though a lot of Red Bulls fans do like Sean Davis. And unsurprisingly, it didn't take long for some MLS team that immediately trying to get the signature of his name, and while that team is Nashville SC, who could potentially have two former New York Red Bulls midfielder in Sean Davis and Dax McCarty in that spot. I'm not sure if Davis and McCarty play with each other, but if they did, then we have a throwback kind of Red Bulls midfield there that that is definitely going to be decent, because we know Dax McCarty, even in now approaching in his mid-30s and probably got a couple years left in the tank, he is still considered one of the best defender or one of the best midfielder in the league. And then Sean Davis, an upcoming midfielder, a guy that I thought he was maybe going to sold off to Europe some days. I mean, he still have a chance to do so, but yeah, if decided to go with Nashville. I think that's a really good signing for Nashville. And also, this is just kind of a warning for any Red Bulls captain in the future, where, yeah, if you're the captain of that team, you know you're going to be out of the door in 1 or 2 year time. I mean, it's almost like that spot is basically cursed, and if you really want to stay with the Red Bulls, you better not have that captain spot, because most likely the team is not going to re-sign you and basically ship you to another team in MLS. But yeah, there we have it. That is pretty much it for all the news that has happened in these past couple of days. Again, there was some big news that has happened, and let me know in the comments below, what do you think of it, and if there's any other news that I didn't mention here on the board, let me know in the comments below also. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.